From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Community colleges in the United States have a lot to offer. Educators say these two-year colleges may be a good choice for international students who have finished secondary school and want to study in the U.S. Today we tell about a program for such students. It is called the Community College Initiative Program. It is designed for students from areas underserved in education and skills training. It lasts one school year. Since 2007, about 2,100 students from 20 nations have taken part in the program. The Bureau of Educational Affairs of the State Department provides for their needs. 3 consortia, or organizations, of community colleges work with the Bureau of Educational Affairs to administer the program. Schools across the United States take part. Cider Rahman is project director of the Community College Consortium, led by Northern Virginia Community College. He says many students in poor rural areas do not have an equal chance to succeed. At the start of their stay in America, students deepen their knowledge of English and learn about their school's surroundings. They can choose from among several fields of study, such as information technology, business administration, and agriculture. Other areas open to them include media and journalism and engineering. Students attend classes and study at participating community colleges. They can also join in internship programs with businesses or nonprofit organizations. You can get more details of the Community College Initiative Program from the Public Affairs section of the U.S. Embassy in your country. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carla Babb.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Growing up can be hard in poor neighborhoods where crime is common. That is the situation Marco Antonio Aguilar faced when he started at Garfield High School in Los Angeles, California. The boy hated school. He says he had the wrong friends, often missed classes, and even got into fights. The school suspended him, barring him from attending classes. He almost was sent to a school for problem students. But Marco Antonio changed his behavior. He says a talk with his mother helped him change. And he praises his teachers for the help they provided. But now, students at Garfield High no longer receive suspensions. The punishment itself has been suspended. Jose Huerta, the Garfield High principal, took the action when he first arrived at Garfield more than 4 years ago. Back then, more than half the students were leaving school without finishing their studies. At the same time, Garfield was suspending nearly 700 students yearly. But Mr. Huerta had other ideas about how to deal with young people who misbehave. He said most of the suspensions were for behavior known as willful defiance. He said that could include something as minor as chewing gum in class. Under Mr. Huerta's leadership, students involved in willful defiance first talk to a teacher. Then a parent may get involved. Finally, group support can be provided. Today, Garfield graduates 85% of its students. And last year, the Los Angeles Unified School District changed its punishment policy. The whole district banned suspension to punish students for willful defiance. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. 60 years ago, the highest court in the United States changed American education. On May 17, 1954, all 9 judges of the Supreme Court ruled against racial separation in public schools. The court said such segregation in schools violates the United States Constitution. At that time, many school systems had separate schools for white students and black students. The segregation was the result of a court ruling from 1896. That decision permitted so-called separate but equal schools. Some schools had only white children. Others had only black children. Then, about 60 years later, the case Brown versus the Board of Education came before the Supreme Court. It involved 5 separate legal actions, but it centered on an African American child in Kansas. Linda Brown lived just a short distance from a school, but she was forced to travel across town to a black school because the school near her permitted only white students. Aderson Francois teaches law at Howard University in Washington, D.C. He says the case ended official racial separation in U.S. schools. But he also criticizes the ruling. He says it should have set a time by which segregation had to end. Some segregated schools did not obey the Supreme Court ruling until the 1960s. Even today, many schools are still effectively segregated. In 2012, the Civil Rights Project at the University of California studied racial populations in schools. The study showed that many schools are less racially mixed than 40 years ago. The study says social and economic issues are partly to blame. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. The reported rape of a 6-year-old student at a well-known school in Jakarta has received widespread media attention in Indonesia. The costly Jakarta International School, or JSI, serves many children of diplomats and wealthy foreign families. Indonesian police have arrested several suspects in connection with the incident reported in early April. Similar reports of sexual abuse at the school have followed. This week, another kindergarten student also said he was abused at the school. The Education Ministry ordered the kindergarten closed. The ministry said the school had been operating without permission. Tim Carr heads the Jakarta International School. He described the recent incident at the school as an unimaginable tragedy. He said the school is taking all measures to prevent another. Years ago, American investigators named a former JSI teacher as one of the worst child sex offenders ever identified. American William James Vahey worked at the school from 1992 until 2002. He killed himself last month after U.S. federal investigators seized some of his computer records. The evidence included 90 photographs of boys Vahey reportedly abused. The number of reported rapes is increasing in Indonesia, but the reports do not get a lot of public attention. Last year, the Indonesian Child Protection Commission declared child rape a national emergency. But it said it does not have dependable numbers on rape. A large part of Indonesian society considers it offensive to talk about sexual abuse. Victims are often afraid to report such crimes. They fear it will dishonor their families. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Priscilla Nangarai of Kajiado, Kenya, retired as a teacher in 2005. Today, at the age of 62, she could be living a quiet life in retirement. Instead, she leads an organization at her home called GRACE, the Girls' Rights Attention, Care and Rescue Center. She tries to rescue Maasai girls from early marriage and make sure they get an education. She has rescued more than 700 girls since 1986. She now has 15 girls at her center, and she is building a dormitory to house up to 80 girls. In the traditional culture of the Maasai people, fathers often promise their young daughters in marriage to older men. Most girls are between the ages of 12 and 14, with some even younger. Their bodies are not ready for sex and childbirth, but that is not the only problem. Most of them must also leave school. Priscilla Nangarai's older sister was forced into marriage at a young age, but demanded that Priscilla receive an education. She says the problem begins when a girl gets booked when she is very young or not even born yet. She says booking is when a man goes to a family, and if there are little girls there, he can book a marriage with one of them. If one of the wives is expecting a baby, he will say, "I want something from this womb," and he can do that. A 14-year-old girl named Roslyn has been at the rescue center since 2008. At the age of 4, she was booked to a man who she thinks was about 60 to 70 years old. "Yes, I was booked," she says, "but when I knew the person that booked me, I just talked to Miss Nangarai. I told her the whole story." Maasai culture calls for the man who wants to marry a girl to start paying the girl's father once the booking has been made. Traditionally, the payment is made with cows, but today money can also be exchanged. When the marriage will soon take place, the girl must undergo a custom that some call female circumcision. Others denounce this practice, followed in Maasai and other cultures, as female genital mutilation. A 13-year-old girl, also named Priscilla, was brought to the center at the age of 5. Her mother wanted her to be educated. The girl says she is thankful, especially for health reasons, that she did not have her sex organs cut. She worries that she could have gotten AIDS from unclean tools. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report. Our website now has a weekly Words in the News quiz. Test your vocabulary at voaspecialenglish.com. I'm Mario Ritter.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Thousands of young people in Senegal attend and live at religious schools called daras. These schools accept only boys. The students are called talibé and they study the Quran. Some daras force students to ask strangers on the street for money and food. The government had promised to stop this forced begging by 2015. But the organization Human Rights Watch says there has been little progress. Recently, a government study found that more than 30,000 students were begging in Dakar, the capital. The boys were reported to be as young as 4 years old. They are often walking the streets shoeless and in torn old clothes. Matt Wells is a West African researcher for Human Rights Watch. He says the boys must bring back a required amount of money, sugar, and rice or face punishment. He says teachers will often severely beat talibé who fail to meet the demand. He also says the boys usually are hungry, live in dirty, overcrowded rooms, and receive very little real education. In March 2013, 8 talibé died in a fire in Dakar. Neighbors said they knew the children could not escape from the school building in which they were living. After the fire, Senegalese officials promised to take steps against child begging. But Human Rights Watch says the government has closed only one dara for safety reasons. HRW says there are hundreds more that violate students' rights. Senegal's Ministry of Justice says it knows of the problems and is working on new legislation. But a ministry official notes there is cultural resistance to laws restricting religion. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Many rural areas in the United States have no doctor. Some medical schools are trying different ways to treat the problem. One idea is to educate doctors in smaller communities and hope they stay. Dr. William Cathcart Rake heads a new program at the University of Kansas in the Midwest. He says, "We need more docs. There's somewhere like a quarter of all of our physicians in Kansas are 60 years of age or older. So we need to be replacing physicians too. He says medical students from rural areas now typically study in Wichita or Kansas City, two of the biggest cities in Kansas. They say, you know, I really have every intention of coming back to rural Kansas, but they meet a soulmate, they get married, their soulmate happens to be from a big city, and we never see them again. The program is based in Kansas' 10th largest city, Salina, home to about 50,000 people. Salina is about a 3-hour drive from Kansas City, past fields of corn, soybeans, and cattle. Student Claire Hinrichsen grew up in a town of about 600 people. One reason she likes the Salina program is because of the size. There are only 8 students, the smallest medical school in the country. Classes are taught by professors in Salina or on a video link from Kansas City or Wichita. Students who complete the 4-year program will then do their residency training in a small community in the surrounding area. One place a resident might work is the Clay Center Clinic, where Dr. Carrie Murphy is a family physician. Dr. Murphy says this is a clinic that has currently 8 doctors and 4 mid-level practitioners, and we cover, of course, this town, but we also have satellite clinics in 2 nearby towns. We just kind of operate as what I call a cradle-to-grave operation. We deliver babies and go all the way up to doing nursing home care. Rural doctors generally serve older, poorer patients. Going into a specialty in a big city can mean better working hours and more money to pay off student loans. The Salina program will pay tuition for each year that students practice in a rural area in Kansas. Dr. Cathcart Rake hopes 4 years of medical school and 2 years of residency will be enough time to put down roots. In his words, it's going to be, hopefully, harder for them to break away from those roots and go to bigger cities. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.